"You can send me back," the mail-order bride whispered. The cowboy replied, "My boy already chose you." The train hissed like a wounded animal as it slowed beside the wooden platform, steam curling into the cold Wyoming air, and Clara Whitmore stood frozen in the narrow aisle with her single brown suitcase clutched so tightly her knuckles burned. She had crossed half a continent to reach this place, answered an advertisement printed in small, hopeful letters, and now that the moment had come, her courage felt thinner than the worn hem of her coat. Around her, passengers moved with purpose, families reunited, men greeting friends, but no one waited for her. She stepped down onto the platform alone, boots touching dust instead of certainty, and scanned the line of strangers with quiet dread. Somewhere among them was the man she had agreed to marry. Somewhere was her last chance at not being sent back to nothing. The town of Red Willow was smaller than she imagined, a scatter of buildings pressed against an endless sky. The wind carried the scent of hay, leather, and something lonely. Clara adjusted her bonnet, smoothed her faded dress, and waited. Minutes passed. Her heart began to sink with each tick of the station clock. Then she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, standing a little apart from the others. He wore a weathered hat pulled low, a coat that had known many winters, and his expression was not eager or disappointed, but guarded, as if hope were a dangerous thing. Beside him stood a small boy, maybe 6 or 7, his hand gripping the man's coat like an anchor. The boy was the first to notice her. He stared openly, blue eyes wide, curiosity unfiltered. Then, without hesitation, he let go of the man's coat and walked toward her. Clara's breath caught as the child stopped just inches away, tilted his head, and studied her face like he was reading a story only he could understand. "You're her," the boy said simply. The man followed, boots heavy against the boards. "Eli," he murmured, a warning and a plea wrapped together. He looked at Clara then, really looked, and she saw uncertainty flicker across his rugged features. He wasn't cruel. That much was clear. But neither was he gentle. Life had carved sharp lines into him. "I'm Jacob Hale," he said. "You're Clara." She nodded, voice trapped behind her ribs. "Yes, sir." The word sir sounded wrong between people meant to share a future, and they both seemed to notice. Silence settled, awkward and heavy. Clara felt suddenly very small, very out of place. She thought of the letter she had written him, carefully chosen words, neat handwriting, hope tucked between lines. She wondered if he regretted reading it. Eli reached for her hand. The simple warmth of a child's fingers shocked her more than the cold wind ever could. She looked down, startled, and the boy smiled, a wide, unguarded smile that felt like sunlight after years of gray. "I like her," he announced, turning to his father. "She smells like bread." Jacob blinked. "Bread?" Clara flushed. "I baked on the train," she said softly. "To calm my nerves." Eli grinned. "See? I told you." Jacob's mouth twitched, just barely, as if fighting a smile he didn't trust. "Well," he said after a moment, "we best get going. Ranch is a ways out." The ride to the Hale ranch passed mostly in silence. Clara sat stiffly in the wagon, hands folded, watching the land stretch endlessly around them. It was beautiful and frightening all at once. Jacob drove with steady hands, eyes forward. Eli hummed quietly, swinging his legs, occasionally glancing back at her as if making sure she was still there. The house appeared on a rise, a sturdy structure, worn but standing strong against time. It looked like a place that endured. As they approached, Clara felt the weight of expectation press down on her chest. This was where she would be judged. This was where she would either belong, or be sent away. Inside, the house smelled of wood smoke and solitude. Everything was clean but sparse, as if Joy had once lived here and quietly left. Clara imagined a woman's touch lingering in the corners, invisible but present. She did not ask about her. She did not need to. Grief leaves its own language. Jacob showed her the small room off the kitchen. "It's not much," he said. "But it's yours. Yours." The word echoed painfully. She set her suitcase down and turned to him, heart pounding so loudly she feared he could hear it. "I need to say something," she whispered. Jacob waited. "If this isn't what you hoped for, if I'm not right for you or your son, you can send me back. I won't cause trouble. I promise." The words spilled out, practiced and fragile. She had rehearsed them for weeks, knowing this moment might come. Jacob's jaw tightened. Before he could speak, Eli appeared in the doorway. "You can't," the boy said fiercely. Both adults turned to him. "She's staying," Eli declared. "I already chose her." Silence filled the room, thick and trembling. Jacob looked at his son, then at Clara, whose eyes shimmered with unshed tears. Something shifted in him then, something quiet but profound. He knelt in front of his son. "Eli," he said gently, "this is grown-up business." Eli shook his head. "You said we needed a home again." Jacob swallowed hard. He stood slowly, meeting Clara's gaze. His voice was rough when he spoke. "My boy already chose you," he said. "And truth be told, I think I did too." Clara covered her mouth as tears finally fell, not of fear, but of relief so deep it felt like pain leaving her body. And in that small, quiet room, 3 lonely souls took their first step toward becoming a family, the boy who chose her, the man who learned to love again. Morning arrived quietly at the Hale Ranch, pale light slipping through the kitchen window as Clara stood at the stove, her sleeves rolled up, bread dough warming beneath her careful hands. She had woken before dawn, nerves stirring her from sleep, unsure of her place in this house, but determined not to be a burden. The ranch creaked awake around her like an old animal stretching its bones, and for the first time in years, the kitchen smelled alive. When Eli padded in barefoot, rubbing sleep from his eyes, he froze, nose lifting, smile spreading slowly across his face like sunrise. "You stayed," he said, almost afraid the words might break something. Clara knelt and smiled back, brushing flour from her hands. "I'm not going anywhere," she whispered, and the boy wrapped his arms around her neck with the fierce certainty only children possess. Jacob watched from the doorway, unseen, something tightening painfully in his chest as he realized how long it had been since his home had felt warm. Days passed, and Clara learned the rhythm of the ranch, how silence spoke louder than words, how Jacob carried responsibility like a second spine, how Eli's laughter had once echoed here and then gone quiet after his mother died. Clara never asked about the woman who had come before her, but she honored her in small ways, keeping the house tidy, speaking gently, letting Jacob grieve without forcing him to explain himself. She worked beside him, mended clothes, read to Eli at night, and slowly, the ranch responded. Jacob noticed how Eli slept better, how the boy began talking again about school, about dreams, about becoming a cowboy like his father. And Jacob noticed something else too, how Clara never demanded affection, never assumed her place, yet somehow filled every empty space with kindness. But peace is often fragile. One afternoon, a rider arrived unannounced, thus trailing behind him like a warning. Clara recognized him instantly. Her blood ran cold. It was Mr. Whitmore, the man who had arranged her mail-order contract, the man who believed women were property once agreements were signed. He dismounted with a smile too sharp to be friendly and handed Jacob a folded paper. "Your bride," he said casually, "isn't legally yours yet. She owes me the remainder of her contract. I've come to collect." Clara stood frozen on the porch, shame and fear crashing together. She stepped forward, voice shaking. "I told you, you could send me back." Jacob looked at her then, not as a stranger, not as a contract, but as family. His jaw hardened. "She's not going anywhere," Jacob said quietly. Whitmore laughed. "You don't get to decide that." Eli appeared beside Clara, small hand slipping into hers. "She's my ma now," he said, voice trembling but brave. You can't take her. Something snapped inside Jacob. He stepped between Whitmore and his family, eyes blazing. You leave. Now. Or I'll make sure you never come back to Red Willow. Whitmore sneered, but the truth was clear, this was no longer a house of grief. It was a home with teeth. He mounted his horse and rode off, spitting threats into the dust. Clara collapsed into tears, convinced she had ruined everything. Jacob knelt in front of her, hands steady on her shoulders. Listen to me, he said firmly. You were never a mistake. You were a blessing we didn't know how to ask for. That night, Jacob finally spoke of his wife, the illness, the loneliness, the fear of raising a child alone. Clara listened without trying to fix anything, her presence enough. When Jacob reached for her hand, it wasn't out of need, but choice. I don't know how to love without being afraid, he admitted. Clara squeezed his fingers gently. We can be afraid together, she replied. Spring came softly to the ranch. Flowers bloomed where dust once ruled. Laughter returned. And one evening, as the sun dipped low, Jacob stood beside Clara on the porch while Eli chased fireflies. You never asked for this life, Jacob said. But you gave us one anyway. He took a breath. Will you stay, not because you have to, but because you want to? Clara smiled through tears. I already chose you, she said. They married quietly beneath an open sky, no contracts, no fear, only vows spoken from healed hearts. Eli stood between them, beaming, holding both their hands like he had from the beginning. And if you listen closely, you can still hear it in Red Willow, the sound of a home rebuilt, not by force or fate, but by love. If this story reminded you that family can be chosen, healed, and rebuilt, please subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring more stories like this to life.